Hey everyone, Afrodo Reviews here, bringing you another book to determine, is it worth reading over second breakfast? Or does it deserve the fiery pits of Mount Doom? For those of you watching, you might be wondering, where's my little button up? To be clear, it's going to be a more casual review. I'm just gonna talk about this book more or less. I'm not really gonna adhere to the structure I normally do. I'm not gonna go into the cover. I'll give you the synopsis, but in the basic sense. I'm going to start maybe doing this more often for my minor TBR, or basically any book I decide to review that's not necessarily part of my main TBR. The ones I talk about in my TBR videos, more or less. With that, I just want to get into this, give you guys a fair warning. So, this is Invasion, part 1 of 3 of the Chaos Trilogy. And this was written by Jon S. Now, for those of you who've watched my channel, the name Jon S. may seem very familiar to most of you. And that's because I've already reviewed one of his works before on this channel. That is The Grey Griffins, Revenge of the Shadow King. Those of you who've watched the video know I didn't really have very many positive things to say about that book. And you might be wondering, well, if it's written by the same author, I'm clearly not going to have very many positive things to say about this book either, probably. Because my issues went more beyond than just the story, and it was actually the writing of the book. And to a degree, you're not wrong. There's definitely some things in this book that is very much of a staple of what John Lewis did in Grey Griffins. That you realize this is Lewis's fault, not Binns' fault. One such thing is the habit of just abruptly ending a chapter. Now, this will happen just randomly and with no through line. There's no cliffhanger. The chapter just sometimes ends. In fact, I think in this book, one chapter literally ends in the middle of a conversation, and the next chapter starts continuing that conversation as if nothing happened. The chapter breaks in here are mostly as if the author realized, oh, this one chapter is getting too long. End. Okay, keep going. But for the most part, I would say that this book is a superior work. Now, I picked this book up, and I actually didn't realize Jon S. was part of the Grey Griffin. This Jon S. was the same one who wrote Grey Griffins when I started reading. But I kept reading because I was under the belief this would give me a better idea of Jon S. work as an author in general. Not every author, some authors, even the really great ones, often put out works that are very less than stellar. Bram Stoker's Lair of the White Worm, for example, is considered a very awful horror novel, but this is the same guy who wrote Dracula, one of the penultimate vampire novels of all time. So this would give me a better chance to judge Lewis's being an author in general. In addition to that, this book is a YA novel, not a children's novel like The Grey Griffins was. In such a way, this would also give Lewis more room to work. He can be more daring with characters, he can be more daring with the plot lines, and there can be an actual sense of danger for the characters that you would otherwise be missing out on in a children's novel, where such danger is very, very rare. Unfortunately, that's not really to say that Lewis takes very good advantage of the fact that this is a YA novel. I don't know if this was his first book after he wrote The Grey Griffins, but it does sort of feel like he can't decide if he's writing for a children's novel or a young adult's novel. And one part of that comes to the huge lack of tension throughout the entirety of this book. Like I said with kid novels, I've already sort of went into it, but when it comes to kid novels, there's very, very rarely a lack of a big tension, because kids authors don't really want their audience, which are children, to feel fear and danger in such a way that you would if you were reading something like Game of Thrones. And it definitely bleeds through into here. There are several points where the characters don't really act like they're in trouble. For reference, in this book, they discover a mind control plot by a big, gigantic tech company that are trying to implant people with things that supposedly are going to help them with neurological diseases such as Parkinson, MS, things like that, to help them control themselves better. And for the most part, it seems to be working, so more and more people are getting these implants. However, Colt's parents, who are killed in the beginning of the book, are revealed to have discovered that this is part of a mind control plot by this company, Trident Enterprise. And Colt is trying to expose them. And then, of course, there's a twist that Trident Enterprises is actually run by a group of alien shapeshifters that want to destroy the world and, take it over for themselves. So, the standard with these kind of books. But so to speak, even though at certain points every member of the main cast has had an attempt on their life, none of them really act like there's this gigantic, powerful tech company trying to kill them, filled with alien shapeshifters, mind you. It just feels like a bunch of kids dealing with the local rich guy trying to tear down their home. Yeah, there's a sense that this shouldn't happen, but in reality, you don't feel like anyone's in danger because of how they act. At several points, Colt is even just kind of wandering about, even when his grandpa and the Chaos Agency, which is basically Men in Black, knows that Trident is currently trying to kill him. He goes off by himself, goes to sing at like a church thing, and otherwise it's just, there's no sense of danger. No one really treats it like they're in danger. But in reality, that's just one of the small complaints I have about this book. The biggest complaint I have about this book is ultimately the first 6 chapters. The first 6 chapters in this book should not be there. And when I say that, I don't mean that these chapters are awful. I don't mean that they're just so bad they ruin the rest of the book. What they do is they remove a massive... What Lewis tries to do in this is create a huge sense of dramatic irony, i.e. where the audience knows something that the characters don't, and we have to watch them try to figure it out. Now, while that can work, the issue therein lies... So I compared the Chaos Agency to Men in Black, and that's for good reason. This book is basically Men in Black for teenagers, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. And honestly, I would lean more to the younger teenagers than the older teenagers. Think Spy Kids, but Men in Black. And that's because, the reason I make that connection is because the first 6 chapters are about Colt going to a Chaos orientation day of sorts, where they test him through various scenarios and show movies, and he plays some games, so they can evaluate his sense of ability to join the Chaos Agency. Obviously, sort of like with Men in Black, when they're doing this, there's that question of how are they going to get rid of these people without someone spilling the beans after they leave? Well, that's because once everyone leaves, except for the select few that were chosen, they are injected with something that promptly wipes their mind a couple hours afterwards. For the most part, those 6 pages, they never come up again, because Colt doesn't remember them. In fact, I personally think that if Lewis had cut this, because Lewis put this in, he robbed himself of an interesting ability to create a sense of mystery. There would have been a great sense of intrigue throughout the book, as Colt and us have to deal with the fact that Colt has been scouted by this Chaos Agency repeatedly in the past, and none of us know about it because they wipe his memory. Colt has to learn about all these things he did. Maybe there's a muscle memory. There's a sense of intrigue. In the beginning, when the aliens first start showing up and one tries to kill him, not gonna lie to you guys, that's also an issue. In the beginning of the book, he's attacked by an underwater creature that tries to kill him while he's surfing, but it never comes up again. And beyond noticing a similar one of these species of the same alien later on, it's never explained why that alien tried to kill him. You could have that sense of, did Colt really see something? What is Colt learning? Like, as he eavesdrops and learns more and more things, there could have been that sense of intrigue followed by a quick wham when you learn that Colt has been scouted by these guys before, has shown up, done great, but then they wipe his mind afterwards. So despite all of that, he doesn't remember anything. Apart from that, you mostly have the standard YA tropes in this book. I'm talking things like the milquetoast love interest who barely gets any lines, barely gets very much screen time, but is the big romantic goal of our protagonist. Even in comparison to his 2 friends, who, since they're opposite genders, there's the YA trope where they need to be mashed together as well. Well, you could argue that he would have worked better with either one of them. Go for the gay angle and put him with his friend Oz. or go for the romance angle and put him with his friend Danielle, who is a much more interesting character than... I honestly don't remember her name. That should tell you how interesting she is. In fact, there's not even really much chemistry between them. There's even that whole little subplot where, oh no, this girl he has a crush on is already in a relationship, and that guy she's with is actually pretty nice, so, I don't want to destroy their relationship. Oh, but no, actually he's a scumbag, because it turns out later he was cheating on her the whole time. Therefore, Colt can go after her with no worries whatsoever. Other than that, though, the book is fine. I enjoyed it. It's, like I said, it's like a Spy Kids spirit put in a Men in Black setting, where you basically have people dealing with aliens to the point where it's almost crossing over into urban fantasy with the level of technology and how it works. Honestly, in the grand scheme of things, there's nothing wrong with this book. And if you're looking for a decent, if very tropey YA novel, I would recommend picking this up. I mean, again, it's like Spy Kids mixed with Men in Black, and it's just overall a decent thing. There's more to the trilogy, so this book might get retroactively better with the following sequels, but on its own, it is definitely a 6 out of 10. Other than that, yeah, that's all I gotta say. Just remember, with every book comes an adventure, and every adventure's worth having. Even the bad ones. Have a good day, y'all.